Good evening and welcome to our 2018 Provincial Election Candidates Forum. My name is Jasmyn Rowley. I am a video journalist with SooToday as your moderator for tonight's forum. I would like to thank Algoma University, who has partnered with the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce and SooToday to help plan tonight's event. I would also like to thank Shaw TV and SooToday, who are televising and live streaming these proceedings. We are on a tight schedule this evening, so we are going to move to the questions quite quickly. However, I would like to run through the format for tonight's forum for our viewing audience. All 6 candidates on the ballot for the June 7th election were invited to take part tonight. Seating and question order for the candidates was decided by a random draw prior to today's broadcast. Similarly, questions and their order were finalized before tonight's broadcast and prior to the candidates' draw. Questions were derived from multiple sources in the community, including Algoma University's Political Science program and the Algoma University staff and faculty, the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce membership, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce's Vote Prosperity for Ontario, and publicly sourced through SooToday.com. Questions will be posed by students in the Politics program and Community Economic and Social Development program at Algoma University. Those students are Pauline Danka, Justin Fiaconi, Eva Heiderman, and Sarah Forrest. Questions will be alternated between the students. We will start the forum by allowing each candidate 2 minutes to outline their and their party's election platform. Following the platform presentations, we will move into our question period moderated by myself. Candidates will answer questions from their seats. Once a question has been posed, each responding candidate will have a 2-minute time to respond. In order to maintain fairness with each new question, a different candidate will respond first. For the first 6 questions, questions will be answered by the candidates on a clockwise basis, meaning candidates will respond following the response of the candidate to their immediate right. After that, questions will be answered by the candidates on a counterclockwise basis, meaning candidates will respond following the response of the candidate to their immediate left. I will make this work. It won't be as confusing as it sounds. I will note that time constraints may prevent us from being able to pose all of the questions that have been prepared or submitted for today's event. I'd like to remind all of us of a few ground rules going into this. First off, if everyone here can make sure that their phones are either off or on silent so we don't have any interruptions. As well, interrupting candidates who have the mic or profanity or any other remarks deemed unacceptable will not be tolerated. At any point, I may request a candidate to stay on topic. A demonstrated or repeated failure to stay on topic or any language deemed unacceptable will immediately result in the candidate's mic being turned off and may result in the candidate being asked to remove him or herself from the forum. At the end of our forum, each candidate will have a 2-minute opportunity to provide some closing remarks. We would like to thank and welcome the candidates who are joining us this evening, and by random selection, the order is Mr. Ross Romano of the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario, Ms. Michelle McLeave of the New Democratic Party of Ontario, Ms. Jacqueline Hamill of the Ontario Liberal Party, Ms. Sandra Holmberg of the Northern Ontario Party, Cara Flanagan of the Green Party of Ontario, and Lance Brizard of the Ontario Libertarian Party. We will now open the floor to opening remarks by each candidate. You have 2 minutes each for your opening statement. And as randomly selected, Mr. Romano, you are first.
Well, thank you very much, Jasmyn, and thank you to the Chamber and SooToday for putting on this debate, our last debate of this election for the 2018 general provincial election. I want to thank you all who are here tonight for being here, and thank all the viewers at home for participating in this. It's so important in the process of democracy to ensure you hear your candidates and get to know what they are all about, get to know what they stand for and who they are. I also want to thank all my fellow candidates. It takes a lot of courage to put your name on a ballot, and so I've said it before, it's important that we have this process. It's important for democracy, and I think it's so hard to be willing to do the things that you have to do to be a candidate in an election, and so I thank you all for participating in this process, and I look forward to, and I'm sure you all do, to Thursday night when we can put this behind us and move forward with making Sault Ste. Marie a better place, which is what we all want. Very briefly, I just want to say that I decided to get involved in politics because I had a concern growing up in Sault Ste. Marie about having a future in Sault Ste. Marie. It was always a scare for me growing up here in my high school years as to whether or not there would be a future for me. And I see it today, that scare still exists in our kids, not knowing whether or not they're going to be able to live in Sault Ste. Marie, buy a home in Sault Ste. Marie, and raise a family in Sault Ste. Marie. Now, as a parent of 3 young children, my wife and I have the same concern as to whether or not our kids will be able to have a future here, and whether or not we'll have a future here, because we want to be where our kids are, and we don't want to have to run away from Sault Ste. Marie to be close to them. I made a promise when I ran last year that I was going to fight for my community. That's the only promise I think that matters, and that's the promise I intend to keep. I've kept it for 1 year, and all I want to say to everybody is look at what I've accomplished in 1 year since I got elected. Imagine what I can do in 4 years as a member of the governing party. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming, and thank you to all those people at home that are watching as well. It has been an exciting time to be part of this election, and I'd like to also thank all the candidates that are here. We've had some interesting conversations, and I'm sure you're going to hear some interesting more. So as the NDP candidate, I started out 30 years ago doing some volunteer work in Sault Ste. Marie. I've sat on a number of different committees, such as Rotary, the Poverty Roundtable, the Community Adjustment Committee, just to name a few. I'm the Labour Council President here in Sault Ste. Marie, and I sit on the Ontario Federation of Labour as a Vice President as well, looking at how we move all workers forward for health and safety issues, violence in the workplace, mental health issues, etc. So when I decided to run, I looked at the NDP platform, and there was a lot of things in the platform that I could stand behind. There's things that I've been lobbying for a long time. And so that's what gave me the motivation to run and be here in Sault Ste. Marie speaking to all of you about the issues. So the NDP is going to reduce hydro by 30%. We are going to look at the issues in healthcare and the issues of senior care, put money into our healthcare system to get some more frontline workers, some nurses. Our pharmacare and dental care is for everyone in Ontario. As I've been going door to door, I hear seniors saying that they don't have dental care. The cost of having dental surgery, et cetera, done is out of their price range, and they're having to choose whether they have dental procedures done, or whether they buy groceries, which to me, I can't even believe that that exists in 2018. We're also looking at how do we, in our plan, we'll be looking at a rail as well as getting road maintenance put back in place, and infrastructure, as well as a government-to-government relationship with First Nations, and looking at the price gouging that's happening with our gas prices. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and I'm sure you'll hear more about our plan in a little bit.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Hamill. I'm your Liberal candidate. I'm incredibly proud of the platform that the Ontario Liberals have put forward for this province. It's a balanced approach. It addresses a host of concerns, and there are things that I'm hearing here in Sault Ste. Marie since I've been campaigning that you're concerned about as well. When we look at the type of community that we have here, I want you to think about what you want to see in that community. Is it a community of cuts, or is it a community of care? I believe in care. The Sault Ste. Marie that I know has always been based in care. It's about caring for each other and offering each other services and supports. That's why I'm proud of our platform to make significant investments in healthcare, mental health care supports, long-term care beds, childcare, making sure that people have access to education. Those are the types of things that I think are important. We're not hearing from people right now that what they need is cuts. The economy is changing. It's changing quickly. People need support to weather that change. And so I think that the conscious decision to invest in our people is important. After all, our people, they're our greatest resource. So why wouldn't we? I'm very, very proud of the platform that we've put forward, because it's not only investing in people, but it's ensuring that small business thrives. It's a balanced approach that charts a course back to a balanced budget, but it means that we're making key investments right now that we're hearing people here need. And so I'm very proud to advocate on your behalf. I'm proud of the opportunity to tell you about this platform over the next hour and a half. And I really hope that I can count on your support on June 7th, because I believe that this community thrives when we have a Liberal representative at the table, and that's what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting to make sure that our services and our supports in this community don't get cut.
Thank you. Sandra?
Thank you to the Chamber, everybody watching, everybody here, my fellow candidates as well. I'm running for the Northern Ontario Party, and as the name states, we're really entrenched in dealings with the North. The Sioux is, I was born here, I was raised here. I'm a farmer 15 kilometers out. I'm not a nomadic person. I want to stay in the area. I have 3 children. I would like them to be able to stay in the area if that's their will. So I really want to ensure that they have opportunities as they come up, and make sure that opportunities are aplenty, and that's what the platform for Northern Ontario Party. It's very precise, yet it's flexible. We are under no party whip, meaning that in each individual riding, we can, as candidates, poll our constituents and vote for what's best for their particular interests. We really would just like the chance to be seen, be heard. Everybody's been really inclusive thus far. So we're really hoping that that's intriguing to you, because the true heart of democracy is having those options, right? So tonight you're going to be listening to 6 options, which I think is incredible. Every time you embark on any kind of campaign situation with good intentions, you're making progress. So we're just hoping to get our foot in the door, bend the ears of people down south, so that we can let them know that we are sitting on untapped resources that's both people-based as well as municipal and everything in that nature and natural resources included. So we hope you enjoy our platform.
Thank you. Kara?
Good evening, and thank you very much to the Chamber and Sue today for organizing this and all the candidates. This has been an exciting race. I'm Kara Flanagan, and I'm running for the Green Party of Ontario here in the riding of Sault Ste. Marie. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory and that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, specifically the Garden River and Batchewana First Nations, as well as the Métis people. I start with that because Green Party wants to do politics differently. We want to put people first and make decisions and policies that are better for the people of Ontario. We want to bring honesty and integrity back to politics. We want to work across party lines with all groups. We want to make decisions going forward into our future that are based on evidence and are proven to show the results that we desire to become the party or to be the province that we want to be. I hope you'll consider doing things a different way and join me on our journey. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lance?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and fellow candidates. I would like to thank everybody for being here and all the viewers at home. I'd also like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for arranging this forum, and I'd like to thank both Shaw TV and Sue Today for covering the event. If you're like me, you've become disenchanted with the major parties in this province, and after doing some research on some of the alternatives, I came across the Libertarian Party. We Libertarians would like to turn Ontario back into the economic powerhouse that it used to be. We want to do this by lowering electricity bills and reducing needless regulations, red tape, and taxes on business. We plan to lower electricity bills by canceling the cap-and-trade program, which we feel is an ineffective way to deal with climate change and just ends up sending our tax dollars down to California and over to Quebec. We will also cancel contracts with green energy companies, which we are paying way over market rates, regardless of how much they produce. Green energy production will be implemented in a more sustainable way. We would like to review the laws and regulations in the books for relevancy and introduce a sunset clause for new laws and regulations where they are reviewed every 5 years to make sure that they are still relevant today. We are also tired of long lineups at the hospital and having to wait months, sometimes years, for operations. When Ontario citizens leave the province for care, we know there's a problem. The Libertarian solution is to break the government monopoly on healthcare. We would allow private insurers to compete with OHIP for your portion of the healthcare tax pool. We wouldn't be adding any extra taxes. They would just be competing for your share of the healthcare tax pool. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, candidates. We will now proceed with the questions. A reminder that each candidate has 2 minutes to respond. So first question, please.
To many Ontarians, leadership and accountability in both local candidates and political party leaders who are vying to become premier is important in deciding who to vote for. What makes you a good leader? And if you are running for a registered party, what makes the leader of your party a good leader for Ontario?
Thank you very much for the question. Absolutely, leadership qualities are clearly very important if you want to be a political representative of your community. I believe that I have shown that I have those qualities over the course of the last year. I think having a strong voice is of critical importance, knowledge of the issues and an ability to adequately discuss those issues and understand them and be in a position to advocate on behalf of your community. I think at the end of the day, any advocate or leader of a community is someone who is capable of doing those things, and I've been doing that in my professional life, and I'm confident and proud to say that I've done that over the course of my last year of being your representative at Queen's Park. I look at the some of the specifics that are important. It's being able to have strong relationships with all the key stakeholders within your community. When I first got elected and there was a problem in the first few days after my election last year on June 1st, with the FPF process in terms of securing the land here in Sault Ste. Marie. I was able to secure a meeting with the CEO of Algoma and have him on an airplane in Toronto within the first 30 days of my election to resolve that issue. Earlier today, I met with the CEO of Ecom to discuss Huron Central Rail and to discuss impacts on the forestry sector, healthcare professionals, and the list goes on and on. Having those key relationships is important for any type of a leadership person who wants to be in the position of leadership in their community. I think when I look at, generally speaking, the leadership, all of our candidates for premier are currently from Toronto. None of them are local. I believe that I'm the best representative here in Sault Ste. Marie to make sure that I bring forward all of the important local issues for Sault Ste. Marie to Queen's Park. And I believe that we are a team that is ready to govern now. We don't need a training course on how to govern. We're prepared to proceed immediately at this time into a government and lead this province to prosperity.
Thank you. Michelle is next. Can you all make sure that you're speaking into the mic when you answer your questions as well so we can hear you?
Is that better? So I'm Michelle McLeave Kennedy, and I have been a leader in this community for some time. I've sit as Labour Council President, so I sit with all the labour unions here, looking at local issues and health and safety issues that have come up with all of our different aspects of our unions. As the Ontario Federation of Labour Vice President, I sit with the government and many other parties discussing issues that are important to all workers in Ontario. So I do have leadership qualities, and I have worked with the municipality on the Community Adjustment Committee, looking at how do we diversify and how do we get vitality back into Sault Ste. Marie by bringing new business into Sault Ste. Marie, and how do we make some changes. When Trudeau came just about a month ago, I sat at the steel table as the Labour Council President, discussing issues for the steel plant and the steel tariffs. We all need to come together. We all need to work together so that we can make Sault Ste. Marie a better place. Thank you.
Jacqueline.
So thank you for the question. Obviously, I'm in a little bit of a different position than my fellow candidates. But that's why I want to focus on what makes me a good leader. And to me, being an MPP is about three things. The first, it's about being an effective advocate. It's about going down to Queen's Park and advocating for you, the city of Sault Ste. Marie. The second part is not only being a leader at Queen's Park, but being a leader here in our own community. What are the things that you're doing in your off time? What are you doing when you're actually here during constituency week? Are you making yourself available? Are you accessible? Those are the types of things that I think are important. The third thing is understanding how the role of MPP works. It's knowing how Queen's Park works. And I know that intimately. I understand the role of a member of provincial parliament. I understand how Queen's Park runs. So I think that those are the types of things that would make me a good leader. When we're looking at leadership, though, if we're going to talk about leaders, I think it's really interesting some of the things that we've seen come out about Doug Ford. That's one of your options as a premier. Over the last 24 hours, we've seen some interesting news from the Star. And I'm just wondering if he's willing to treat his family like that, how is he going to treat Ontarians? That's the type of leadership I'm worried about. That's why I'm running, because that type of leadership concerns me. It concerns me for what it means for our province. So in looking at leadership, I'm in a position to be a strong advocate, for this community, because that's fundamentally your job as an MPP. Thank you.
As far as leadership goes, I mean, I don't have a master's in political science by any means, but I don't think credentials and a resume are really conducive to what a leadership roles would mean, right? Like I said, we're farmers. I'm a parent. I run a feed store in Echo Bay for Co-op Regional, and we have several stores across Northern Ontario. So that's just a portion of my resume. So in two parts, me as a leader. Like I said, the credentials aren't necessarily your go-to when that happens. Somebody who can be relentless, who has empathy, which I don't think we see enough these days. So we've been doing the same thing over and over. So if we try something new, you might get the things that you're looking for. And as far as our Trevor Holiday, He is our party leader, and he's entrenched in the north, which is really our goal and our basis. And he's been around since the insurgents of the Northern Ontario Heritage Party, who were separatists in the 1970s. And as I said, they were relentless. They didn't have the funding some other parties do. They were camping out on on lawns, trying to get their words across. So we've graduated from that, luckily, and we're still kind of banging on the door, so to speak. But a good leader, I think, pushes for accountability, whether that's fiduciary, right? I haven't seen anybody's book work. I'm not a forensic accountant either, but I think that's one of the leadership roles, is to go in and see what was done prior and to hold those people accountable for that.
Kara. Thank you for the question. For years and years, I'd be voting for different parties and hoping for change, and it didn't happen. And so I had to look around and figure out what else is there. And that's when I found the Green Party, and I'm so glad that I did. And I'd been a member for years, and they called me and asked if I would represent them in the election in 2014. So I had to give it some thought, because that's not an option that many people are asked to do. And giving it careful consideration, I had to look at my own values. And if you want to make a difference, you have to be the difference. So I could not say no. And I'm also a person that's known to be passionate about ideas. I have a vision. You may have heard about my indoor beach idea. I'm not stuck in the past, but I'm very cautious to review the evidence. And one thing that I'm finding that is very not common anymore is you have to take time to think about things. To ask and have an immediate answer, sometimes that has to happen. However, in most cases where there's important decisions that need to be made, you have to do some processing, mental processing and thinking. And I have to tell you that the Green Party, people-powered change, everything we do is to protect people, planet, and jobs. And the leader of the Green Party is exceptional. He was interviewed by the Toronto Star editorial board, as were all the other leaders, and the Toronto Star editorial board endorsed him because he had a depth of policy knowledge, he had candor on challenging situations, and he wasn't afraid to have the difficult conversations about issues going forward that we're going to have to make.
Lance.
Okay. To me, leadership requires courage, intelligence, charisma, and integrity. If a leader lacks courage, then they will be lacking the will to defend their values. Then why are they trying to lead in the first place? If a leader lacks intelligence, it will be apparent to the public right away, and it will be very hard to take this leader seriously. If a leader lacks charisma, it will be hard to get anybody to listen. What's the point in leading if you don't have any followers? And finally, if a leader lacks integrity, nobody will trust them. You can't follow through on their promises. If a leader is untrustworthy, the public won't support them, and neither will other leaders. And they'll be reluctant to deal with them as well. This spells doom for their cause. The Ontario Libertarian leader, Alan Small, and myself possess all of these traits. You can trust us to lead Ontario courageously and intelligently to a prosperous future. Thank you.
On to our second question, please.
The debates among provincial party leaders revealed that Northern Ontario is barely on the radar of provincial leaders. What is it exactly that you will do for Northern Ontario to raise its profile and serve its needs?
And for this question, we start with you, Michelle.
So the NDP platform has a specific platform just geared to Northern Ontario. We have 6 things that we are going to work on for Northern Ontario, and some of which I mentioned earlier. So we are going to invest in northern healthcare. When Andrea Horvath was here the other day, she mentioned 600 long-term beds coming to Sault Ste. Marie as soon as shovels are ready, as soon as the government changes. Winter road maintenance, as we all know in Sault Ste. Marie and the highways surrounding, has been a nightmare for some time. We will make the maintenance public again, getting some services, much needed services for our area, as well as look at the rail strategy and get some of our trucks off the road using rail. Good jobs in Sault Ste. Marie, we will develop a resource strategy that looks at areas of importance, for example, steel, lumbering, and other resources. We will put $1 billion to the Ring of Fire to ignite the Ring of Fire now, to get things moving and talk with all stakeholders and get the process going, as it hasn't gone in the last while with either the Liberal or the PC government. We will stop the price gouging for gas in Sault Ste. Marie and Ontario, and we will look at reducing hydro by 30%, which certainly will assist small and medium-sized businesses as well as people in our province. We'll keep northern schools open and invest in education. We'll invest in education from elementary right up to college, university, with apprenticeship programs, co-op programs, and get some much-needed services and much-needed business back to Sault Ste. Marie by getting tradespeople and other people some new business in our area. Thank you.
So I'm really proud of the part of our platform that's specifically dedicated to Northern Ontario. This includes investments in the NOHFC. We're raising the NOHFC budget to $150 million. We have a $1 billion commitment to the Ring of Fire, building on the work that we've already completed thus far, with construction slated to start in 2019. We are committed to four-laning the entire stretch of the Trans-Canada Highway border to border. That's a huge commitment for this community. We're looking at an additional investment of $206 million specifically for northern infrastructure. These are the things that the Soo needs. What I'd like to point out is that while we have a specific platform for the north, the PC's plan is 164 words long. That's what they think of Northern Ontario, that it's worth 164 words. They are 4 promises that I'm not sure how they're going to accomplish. We have covered a number of Northern Ontario concerns in our platform, and we are ready to address them. We have a solid plan. We're making investments in the north. We're investing in infrastructure. As I said, now is the time for these investments. It is not the time for cuts. So I'm very, very proud of the platform we're putting forward. As I mentioned before, being an MPP is advocating for a community. You're advocating for a community. And so I'm prepared to do that. I see the challenges and the opportunities that exist up here. I've lived here most of my life. So I understand them, and I'd like to go down to Queen's Park to fight for them, to make sure that we are getting the investments that we need. Thank you.
We love this question, right? Hence the name, of course. I mean, we're the only party with we fully focus on North, and I mean, you're going to hear that everybody has a stake in it, but by the time they get down to Toronto, we're forgotten about again, right? So, I mean, that's just the way it is. There's no numbers that I need to tell you about that. A vote for the Northern Ontario Party is a vote for manufacturing, just one of the platforms we have. It seems like you're in the core or the semi-periphery or the periphery, and money trickles away the further you get away from the core, and we've never been a core. Could we be? Of course. We're sitting on billions of untapped resources, of course, and agriculture being one of them, actually. We had a tile drainage initiative through the Innovation Centre some years ago. So now our farmers are able to grow crops that once were not feasible for them. I don't see why we can't grasp this funding, such as, for example, Dr. Utker makes pizzas, and they got $7 million from the government to help them allocate 100% fresh local ingredients. These are just, some of the things that pass us by because we're not the squeaky wheel down south, and there's absolutely no reason that we couldn't be so.
One thing, and I'm from Southern Ontario more than 30 years ago, and I've lived here ever since, is that Southern Ontario doesn't get it. They really don't understand Northern Ontario. We have challenges with our climate. We have lots of snow and cold. And we also have Geography is a challenge. And distances, that's not even on their radar. We also have a low population. And Southern Ontario is very comfortable taking our resources and traveling through our area and tourism and stuff, and we want them to come. However, we need to be recognized and acknowledged for providing those things. And one thing about the Green Party is we've been very active in advocating that we change our royalty rates on our resource extraction, because Ontarians are not getting the full benefit of the resources that industry is taking from us. So that is an important thing to put out there. Also, we need to make sure that that all of the local communities and the First Nations receive economic and environmental benefit from everything that we do here. I want to champion our connectedness to the province and to Canada in the transportation and cell service and internet service. Those things are now necessities in our community. And transportation, of course, the Green Party wants to electrify and invest in mass transit. And imagine having a 5% of the transportation budget for cycling infrastructure.
Okay. Like the Northern Ontario Party, the Libertarian Party doesn't have a party whip, meaning that I'm allowed to pull the riding to see what's in our best interests. So long as I don't go against the party platform or charter, I can vote for the best interests of my party. I would also, of my riding, sorry. I would also like to push for more fair representation in the North. You take an area the size of the Algoma district and transpose it over any area over Southern Ontario, and it's pretty much you have as more ridings in that area than all of Northern Ontario combined. Like, this is not fair at all. It translates to our voice becoming a mere whisper, and we have to redraw these riding lines so the North can finally be heard. We would also like to look into any redundant regulations that are slowing down progress for all business, but in particular for this concern, the Ring of Fire. If we can get that up and running quicker, then that benefits the North even faster. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as a starting point, let me say this. We are committed as a party to doing a number of things within our platform. I will go through those as they relate specifically to Northern Ontario, but I want you to listen carefully to what all these individuals here will say to you today with respect to their respective platforms and with respect to any challenges with respect to our platform, and just listen carefully, and let's see if I can do this in 164 words or less. So as a starting point, we are going to reverse the aviation fuel tax. That's 148% fuel tax implemented by the Liberal government. That has caused significant problems within Northern Ontario, specifically in Sault Ste. Marie. I had numerous conversations with Terry Boss, the airport president and CEO, with respect to this. He was very excited about reversing that fuel tax, given what that will do. It makes it easier to get products to market, get commodities into the communities, especially in far Northern Ontario. Excuse me. We will be investing in the HCR. We'll make sure we rehabilitate that and provide funding through the NOHFC fund to ensure that it is sustainable on a long-term basis. We will be investing in the rail loop and the Northlander and ensure that we get the Northlander back on track, because we need people movers in this province, in this region as well. We will also be looking at resource revenue sharing projects for Northern Ontario, and increasing the OMPF fund. So that's money that's going to go directly into the municipalities to allow the municipalities funding for things such as roads, culverts, whatever it is that needs to be done. We're not going to tell the cities out there in Northern Ontario how to spend their money. We're going to give them the funding so that they can do what they need to do at the municipal level. We will be investing in the Ring of Fire. I personally will continue the work I started on the Ring of Fire and on the Ferrochrome processing facility. I will stand by my record. I've increased the profile for Sault Ste. Marie across Northern Ontario, and I will just continue to do what I've been doing. But when I'm in a position of being in government in 2 days' time, I will be able to bring that Ferrochrome processing facility home.
On to our third question.
Reliable, efficient, safe, accessible, environmentally responsible transportation is essential to Sault Ste. Marie's economic, social, and environmental sustainability. Ontario's Northern Growth Plan promised to develop multimodal transportation for Northern Ontario. What are your party's plans and priorities with regard to the development of transportation infrastructure or the strategic use of current transportation infrastructure, including highways, waterways, and rail?
And for this question, we start with you, Jasmyn.
So I know that transportation infrastructure in Northern Ontario is critically important. I know that it's even more important that we continue to see investments in these things to make sure that we're getting our fair share and that our infrastructure is taken care of. That's why I'm especially proud of the commitment that we're making to have an additional $206 million to Northern infrastructure specifically. That's money that's coming to infrastructure specifically for Northern Ontario. It means that we can use it up here in these regions to make sure that our infrastructure is sound. The other thing that we're doing is we are tripling the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund from $1 million to $300 million. That's significant. That allows municipalities money to address their infrastructure needs, and by tripling that, we're making sure that Northern Ontario communities such as Sault Ste. Marie are getting their fair share. The other thing that we're doing is we're investing $490 million into the Ontario Northland Transportation Commission. So that means that that's $490 million that will go towards rail refurbishment, bridge refurbishment, and maintaining their trains. So these are important investments to make in our Northern transportation infrastructure. I'm very proud of them. They are fully costed, and they're in our platform. I want to make sure that we are seeing these investments because I think that they're important. Economic infrastructure in our northern regions is important, and we need to make sure that they are fully funded, and I'm committed to that. I'm committed to advocating for that on behalf of this community. Thank you.
If we find ourselves holding any balance of power, one of our first initiatives is going to be negotiating the immediate return of passenger rail. One of my colleagues just was at last night a rally for rail in Searchmont, and I don't know if you know the goings on there, but people are really passionate about having that back for merchandise, logistics, passenger rail, things of that nature. Obviously, there's been a lack of funding, or we wouldn't see the issues that we have, as you can see from the example of the derailment in Moosonee. Obviously, we are for a 4-lane to all the way down south as well. I mean, we're never going to get rid of tractor-trailer logistics, but we can make it the health and safety issue there just mitigated a bit by doing that rail for passengers as well as manufacturing. And it also would draw some tourism up here. I know that last time I was in Toronto, actually my Uber driver was asking about the Agawa Canyon train tour, and he was elated to be coming up here and asked me how the highway was and if it was worth the drive on those 2-lane highways to get up here to do that. So that would be something to look at in the future as well. Thank you.
Well, in reviewing the Northern Growth Plan and the multimodal transportation package, I was really inspired because the Northern Policy Institute is looking at how we can do this up here, and I think that's a valuable asset. I'm really excited that all of the candidates here are strong proponents for rail because that really is the low-hanging fruit and a no-brainer going forward. The Northeastern Ontario Rail Network it shows a circular connection of existing infrastructure, rail infrastructure, to move people and freight. And if you look in the context of our aging demographic, and there are people who cannot drive or are not able to drive, rail is only more efficient and environmentally friendly. It connects us in the north, and that's very important. It increases safety both on the roads as well as in the rail, and it reduces our road wear and tear. And going forward with the disruption of climate change on our road system, we need alternatives. Of course, the Green Party wants to electrify transportation because 35% of our greenhouse gases come from our transportation system. So getting off fossil fuels as soon as possible and increasing different ways of moving goods and people in a massive, efficient and environmentally friendly way is big on our plan. Thank you.
I believe that rail is far underutilized in Ontario as well as across Canada. A few years back, I was fortunate enough to take a trip into Europe, and their rail system over there is vastly beyond ours. I was able to go to any city I wanted pretty much on a train, and it was very cheap, and it was very efficient, and it was very clean. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the Rally for Rail in Strathmore yesterday because I had to work, but I was supporting it in spirit. I would also love to see more chartered boat tours of the Great Lakes. The Agua Canyon train has been mentioned, but Lake Superior has some of the most beautiful scenery in the entire world, and we could do well to capitalize that to bring in a lot more tourism. The holiday train does well, so why couldn't chartered boat tours around the beautiful shores of Lake Superior do just as well? Thanks.
Thank you very much. So as a starting point, we are going to, I am committed to working towards trying to see a 4-laning of the highway from here to Toronto. I think that's something that has been talked about many times, and I intend to continue to fight to try to see that through. It's getting closer, but that needs to be a priority. With respect to rail, I really want to focus on the HCR. The HCR is something I've been looking at since November when the issue first arose. We need to look at a long-term solution, a long-term and sustainable solution to maintain the HCR rail, and we are prepared to do that through the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund grant process. Looking at that railway, we have to see it as a more integral part of infrastructure that needs ongoing rehabilitation and help from the government. It feeds products to market and raw materials in from Ecom, Domtar, and Algoma. That's 90% of the freight just within those 3 companies alone in Northern Ontario. And when you look at what that amounts to, if you get rid of that rail line, you're going to have 38,000 trucks extra per year on your highways, more wear and tear on your highways, causing strain there. We need to ensure that we maintain that rail line and we invest in its infrastructure on an ongoing basis so that we could take those trucks off the road. It's better for the environment and it's better for the businesses. It's a 30% more expensive cost to get product to market via truck as opposed to via rail. That's a conversation I just had with the CEO of Ecom this morning, in fact. So these are things that we need to do with respect to rail on a product to market basis, freight rail. People movers are important. We are going to invest in the Northlander and look at getting the rail loop completed. And in addition to that, there's also the issue of the Ring of Fire and completing the road there, which will bring such a significant economic benefit to our region and make us the economic engine of Northern Ontario here in Sault Ste.
So thank you. Thank you for the question. My partner travels to Wawa on a weekly basis, and the road maintenance this winter has been atrocious, to say the least, with road closures, dangerous situations, and just culvert collapses, etc. It makes it difficult for people to get products to market. The NDP has in its platform to make road maintenance and winter maintenance back in public hands so that we have the services that can be checked on as well as properly maintained. This winter, for instance, the company that was looking after the maintenance apparently at some point only had 2 snowplows on the road. I mean, how is that possible for Northern Ontario? How is that even possible for Sault Ste. Marie? So when we look at those issues, there's certainly things that there needs to be money invested, and we have a platform to do that. When I look at the rail strategy is very important to Huron Central. We have allocated $4 million over 5 years to invest in that so that the products can get to market, as well as tourism, as has been talked about. And it also affects all of Northern Ontario, not just Sault Ste. Marie. Of course, it will certainly help our businesses here, and by getting the road into the Ring of Fire, we will certainly keep northern jobs in Northern Ontario and keep the Ring of Fire here in Northern Ontario, not in the United States, as has been stated by Doug Ford. Doug Ford's privatization and cuts have also been suggested for road maintenance. We need to invest in public services. We need to keep things public so that they can be maintained and so that we can have affordability and transparency in Northern Ontario. We are also committed to having the rail loop, both for tourism and for products, so that we can move people, as was suggested by other people, that people in Northern Ontario can't always get to Southern Ontario, and they need to have other rail as well as buses and other things to get trucks off the roads and make things more affordable and convenient in Northern Ontario.
Next question, please.
Do you support the development of the Ferrochrome processing facility in Sault Ste. Marie? How would you help develop the Ring of Fire?
For the yes and no portion, yes, we actually have this outlined in our platform, and it's nice because it ties into much of the rest of our platform. So we would like a legislation where 50% of our natural resources are manufactured right up into the end to here in Northern Ontario. So that ties into that as well. I mean, the trickle-down benefits as far as job creation there, hiring Northern Ontarians, that when I've been knocking on doors, job creation, finding a job, retaining employment has been one of the things I've been hearing. So we really want to invest in partnerships, stakeholders there, and I think, pending an environmental impact study, which, has the wheels are going on that. Of course, it's a lengthy process, right? So I think that's something that's actually vital to Northern Ontario as well. So we're not degrading any of our, beautiful scenery and taking away from the resources that make us so wonderful place to manufacture or to work and play. So thank you.
Okay, the Ring of Fire is an amazing find, an amazing opportunity. And to ask me if I support the Ring of Fire and the development of a ferrochrome processing plant in the Soo, I have to say, in all honesty, I don't have enough information. In the nature of my work, I protect people in the environment, and the Green Party thinking is along those lines as well. You can't have happy, healthy, productive people if you don't have a safe and sustainable environment. So, information that I would need to have before I give an answer is I'd like to see an environmental impact assessment, both for meeting our climate obligations to the rest of the world, as well as how this would cost against our provincial and federal carbon budget. So that would be important. I would also have to have a health impact assessment. So how would that processing facility affect our people in our community, and locating it on the Algoma Steel site, that if there was any exposure risk, that's the majority of our population, because that's a downtown location. So I would need more information. But keep in mind that the Ring of Fire isn't going anywhere. It's going to be there. We don't have to do this in a hurry. We can take our time, make sure that this becomes, if it goes ahead, the poster child for sustainable mining. And we need proof that it's safe for health and the environment. And we need full buy-in from the priorities of the First Nations as well. So there's a lot to this. Let's do it right if we're going to do it.
I fully support developing a ferrochrome processing facility here in Sault Ste. Marie. Unfortunately, here in the Soo, we're mostly reliant on the steel plant and the tube mill as the main employers. If we can attract more industry to the Soo, then we won't be so reliant on each individual industry. So if steel takes a hit, like due to tariffs per se, and the mill lays people off, the whole city won't be as affected, since the other industries can help us make it through the harder times. This will also open up the possibility of manufacturing jobs here in the Soo. We have a problem with exporting raw materials, which also exports manufacturing jobs. We need to keep those manufacturing jobs here and export value-added products proudly made here in Canada. But what about the emissions? Well, when manufacturing jobs go to less regulated jurisdictions like China, they are free to pollute as much as they want, pretty much. Isn't it better to keep the jobs here where we have stricter regulations on emissions and other pollutants? As far as the Ring of Fire is concerned, we want to reduce unnecessary regulations and red tape, which are greatly slowing down development. We also want to make Ontario less costly to do business, which would free up more of their capital to speed up their development. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. I support the Ring of Fire and the Ferrochrome processing facility. I've been working on this ever since before I ran for politics last year or ran for this role. I have been the Ring of Fire and Northern Ontario jobs critic for the PC Party of Ontario since I began representing you a year ago. The work that I have done, I have put a great deal of effort and time. This has been my number one project since I got elected with respect to the Ferrochrome processing facility and Noront. I was on an airplane 5 days after I got elected. I was meeting with Noront at their offices because they had concerns about Sault Ste. Marie, and they explicitly stated to me that we were out of the running for the Ferrochrome processing facility. I went there, I resolved their concerns within 1 month as your representative, 30 days. I had Kalyan Ghosh, CEO of Algoma Steel, on an airplane with me to Toronto. We met with the Noront executives. We resolved the issue. I formed a committee at the local level with a number of key stakeholders to establish a community buy-in and to address the issue of the environmental assessment process. And we then joined with the city's bid committee. I was in Toronto on February 2nd when we put our bid in for the Ferrochrome processing facility. None of that would have been possible had it not been for the work I did in the first 30 days after I got elected. You want to talk about supporting the Ring of Fire? I've been there. I've been to every one of the communities, all those First Nation communities. That's 1,100 kilometers north of here. I don't think anybody else can say that. I've been into those communities. I've dealt with all of the First Nations chiefs there, spoke with them, even started to learn Ojibwe lessons so that I can communicate with them and be able to make meaningful progress and consultation. I look at the other parties, specifically the NDP party. They have candidates who want to ban mining. They have candidates who believe in the LEAP manifesto, want to shut down mining and forestry and manufacturing jobs in this province. How is this party ever going to get mining done in Ontario? How are they ever going to move forward the Ring of Fire with those type of radical beliefs?
It's interesting that you bring up radical beliefs every time we have a debate. So yes, we do have put money forward for the Ring of Fire. As I had stated earlier, we have $1 billion that is going to be invested for the Ring of Fire to get the road done, to bring all the stakeholders together and discuss the issues that need to be put in place to get this moving now. We are invested in getting this process and this plant in Northern Ontario to bring good paying jobs to Northern Ontario. We owe it to the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie, and we owe it to people in Northern Ontario to get this started now.
So yes, I'm absolutely supportive of a processing facility here in Sault Ste. Marie. I know that municipal staff worked hard to put forward a strong and compelling bid, and at this point it is a company decision. Now, if Sault Ste. Marie is selected, there will be a body of legislative work at the provincial level that will need to be done, and I'm committed and fully supportive of doing that work. What I find interesting is that Mr. Romano has mentioned Ring of Fire. Ring of Fire has to happen before that processing facility comes to this community. And what I'd like to point out is that it is missing from the platform. It is not in the plan. There is no monetary commitment. There is no plan to move forward. And furthermore, he speaks of respect, but his leader has said that he will bulldoze through those communities. The Liberal Party has done the work to do meaningful consultation with First Nations partners. That is something that's important because they deserve as much opportunity in this opportunity as we do. And so to do those consultations is a vital part of that process. To have a leader that says that he's going to bulldoze through those communities while also having a candidate saying that he respects those communities, I find that a little bit troubling. Not only that, but how is he going to deliver on that promise? If it's not in the platform, how is he able to keep his leader on track? And how is he able to promise funding for that Ring of Fire when it's not even in their document? That's troubling to me. The Ontario Liberal platform contains the $1 billion commitment to continue seeing this work through. We are ready to start road construction in 2019. We are doing environmental assessments right now. We have had those meaningful conversations, and we continue to have meaningful conversations with First Nation partners, and that's important. It's important to go about this the right way, as Kara mentioned. Thank you.
Next question.
The Sault Ste. Marie riding is home to a significant Indigenous population, including multiple Métis and First Nation communities. In light of the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, what are you and your party's plans for contributing positively to the reconciliation of relationships with Métis and First Nation peoples?
As Canadians, we must acknowledge that treaties were broken, and we are all of the treaties. Land was taken unceded, and Indigenous rights were violated. The damage, the intergenerational damage that was caused by the assimilation processes in our history, the policies of the residential schools, and the 60s scoop have had irreparable damage, and for that, I'm ashamed. However, as citizens, we need to know this part of our history. Just recently, I don't know if you saw the movie Indian Horse, and that was really expressed how significant the 60s scoop is when you hear that on the news. That really gives a different context of just how impactful it was on people who experienced that. In the 94 calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, it's important to implement those, but what's missing, and I think we need to establish, is a means of monitoring and evaluating how much progress we're making on implementing those calls to action. I'm very proud my agency where I work it's arranged for all of us to have cultural competencies training through the Indian Friendship Center. And boy, does that give you a different lens to look at where we came from and how we got here. We need to reinvigorate the treaties. And something that's always missing is that we have to meet UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, and that means land and restoring lands to the First Nations. So these are some thoughts that I would bring to the table.
My party has no specific stance on this issue, so I'm able to use my own personal judgment. My grandmother was actually a victim of the residential school system, and to this day, she refuses to talk about the horrors that she had to endure while she was there. Not only that, but the length of time that some First Nations communities have had to endure boil water advisories is just appalling. I'm in favor of inclusion over segregation, and I will do everything and anything in my power to raise the living conditions on the reserves to the same level that every other Canadian enjoys. For instance, better access, such as rail to remote reserves, would drastically reduce transportation and shipping costs. Lower shipping costs leads to affordable groceries and much better living conditions. It's time for all Canadians to be treated equally. Thank you.
Thank you. Anin, Bojo. Rosramano Indigenous, Bawating Indojaba. Anishna Ajiayan, Mino Dibikat. I started this process thinking about the Ring of Fire, thinking about the economic benefits that we could derive in Ontario because of what the Ring of Fire was. I went into the communities to start the consultation process because I thought They were owed that level of respect. I thought that was the right thing to do. I wanted to show my commitment to a proper consultation process with our First Nations by doing it differently. So I committed to spending the night in every one of those communities. I did that. I didn't think it was enough, though. I thought, how do I really show how committed I am to what reconciliation really is? So I started taking Ojibwe classes, hired an instructor, Barb Nolan from Garden River and Eldar, did Sweat Lodge, participated in the culture, learned the language, went into those communities, and what they all said to me was the same thing. One chief after another chief. Chief Johnny Yellowhead in Nibinamik, Chief Wayne Munias in Nishkantaga, and the list goes on and on. Ross, are you getting on your plane right after this meeting and leaving? I said, no, I'm spending the night here. They said, well, everybody, these Liberals, they've been coming here for 11 years, and all they do is they fly in, tell us what they think we want to hear, and then they fly off. That is not what consultation is the right way. 11 years since the Ring of Fire was discovered, it hasn't been done yet, nothing has been accomplished. That is not what consultation is the right way. Promising $1 billion isn't going to get these things done. What we need to do is work together with the First Nations. And what Noront is doing now to have them focus on the road, they are the proponents of the road, that is a great start.
So in our platform, we will be looking at the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation and working on a government-to-government basis with the First Nations to develop a plan going forward as to how we can implement those recommendations. We're also going to look at investing in Indian Friendship Centers because that's the hub that childcare and elders and meals and all jobs, lots of things come through the Indian Friendship Center, and it's a community hub. So we're going to invest in those Indian Friendship Centers in order for people to feel more valued and for people to be able to have jobs and training and be more on a government-to-government basis, both on reserve and off reserve. We're also going to look at replacing the Far North Act. And we'll look at revenue sharing for all the resources in Northern Ontario. So in our platform, we have discussed training, we've discussed job options, we've discussed investing in Native businesses. It's all in our platform. So we will be there to look at the recommendations for the Truth and Reconciliation and get things moving in the direction that they should be going. As Kara has said, there are certainly some wrongs that need to be righted, and we're on the step to get that going.
So I don't think anyone can doubt the Ontario Liberals' commitment to reconciliation. We made an official apology for residential school systems. We renamed an entire ministry to demonstrate and reflect that commitment to reconciliation. We created a framework for reconciliation called The Journey Together. We're investing in different supports to make sure that reconciliation happens. If you look at our platform, we have included reconciliation in that platform, where the PCs haven't even mentioned these communities in their platform. I'm proud of that. I'm very proud that we've taken the time, we have looked at and consulted with to see what those supports are needed, and we have a reconciliation section in our platform. Some of the things that we're looking at doing are increasing childcare spaces on reserve, making sure that these are culturally relevant. We are looking at increasing mental health supports, healthcare. Not only that, but we're looking at supporting Indigenous leaders to not only design and implement these programs, but control how these programs are running on their reserves. That's important. There's a lot that I could talk about in the Liberal platform, but I don't think that you could look at the things that the Ontario Liberal government has done and not see a clear demonstration to reconciliation. And if you look at our platform, you can see a clear demonstration to continue working with First Nations partners to make sure that they are getting the things that they need. Thank you.
I think we can all agree on this one, and the 20 million over 3 years that the Liberals have set aside for the Truth and Reconciliation is a step, right? And it's taking a word and putting it into action. So after the unconscionable things that went on until recently, it wasn't that long ago that the last residential school closed down. Economically, Basically, in our platform, we touch on it, and that's just making sure that the fish and wild game systems, they are being able to control that, self-govern, things of that nature. And as far as socioeconomic goes, I mean, it's you think it's, you know, it gets worse as you get north, as far as funding goes and things of that nature. I mean, you know, children on First Nations are 5 to 7 times more likely to commit suicide, and we are flying in counselors intermittently to help them out. I know if I was at my wit's end and I wanted to speak to somebody immediately, I would like to have somebody, you know, there within walking distance, not wait for a fly-in a counselor and things of that nature. So, I mean, looking at things and those 94 points of call to action, they're very, very doable things. You know, they're not astronomical. They want records. They would like cemeteries kept up. I don't think that's too much to ask as far as I'm concerned. So those things are all doable, and they are things that are essential and for repairing those relationships. And hopefully that can be done. And as well as anything with manufacturing, mining, what have you, that's where the economic and environmental assessments come in. So these people, you know, people aren't drinking, have mercury in their water, things of that nature. I mean, it's just egregious, so.
Next question, please.
Northern Ontario needs a skilled workforce. What will you and your government do to ensure our Indigenous community and businesses are being given the support they need to fill those jobs with our Indigenous youth?
The Ontario Libertarian Party wants to create a better business climate by reducing both corporate and small business taxes. Coupling this with eliminating needless red tape and reducing electricity costs, and job growth will soon follow, adding more opportunities for our youth. We would also like to reduce government control over school curricula, allowing them to tailor their programs to the changing needs of an evolving job market. So this allows our students to be better prepared for the jobs of today and the jobs of tomorrow. Thanks.
Well, specifically with respect to the Indigenous youth part of the question, I think that it's important, and this stems from the earlier question as well with respect to reconciliation and how we actually accomplish that in a meaningful way. I think it's important to look at an education strategy where we teach our youth at a young age what went on in the entire residential school process, the treaties, how they were signed, whether they were honored. I think it's important also to teach about the cultural ways of our First Nations and to ensure that they can have pride in their background because it is something to be proud of. I think it's important that we all know what occurred in the past and we have real understanding of the history of the culture and what occurred in this country and what really happened through the residential school process. I think that will empower the next generation moving forward, which is so important for us to be able to work together on significant projects, things like the Ring of Fire, so many other areas. Now, when we look at the jobs that exist in Northern Ontario, we have a lot of forestry sector jobs have been lost because of the mismanagement of this province and the mass amount of red tape. Speaking again with Ecom today, they were telling me how they need 40 permits in order to cut down a single tree. And it takes 40 months to get that done on Crown land, 6 weeks on private land. That's just not a sustainable way to keep that business viable moving forward. But now, education. We need to educate our kids where the jobs are. We have a problem doing that right now. We've turned people away from the trades. We've made it seem like something that is a lesser way of life. The trades are a great thing to be pursuing. Skilled trades are great areas of employment for our youth. And I would really like to focus our education where the jobs are and making sure we arm our teachers with the tools that they need to be able to provide world-class education to our students. Our students should not be scoring 6th grade levels. Math scores should not be at 6th grade level. We need to be leaders, and we need to make sure we employ our people where the jobs are.
So, as I've discussed earlier, we will be investing in education from elementary right up until college and university by putting more co-op programs, changing the curriculum for elementary students, as well as building opportunities for all youth to be employed. Now, under our co-op programs and under our apprenticeship programs, we'll be discussing with employers as well as with the trades the opportunity that's needed and build those programs in through Sault College and Algoma University. When I sat on the Community Adjustment Committee last year, that was one of the issues that came up from people in the community, that we need to look at jobs that are needed and jobs that are coming forward, not be putting opportunity behind. So for the trades, for instance, we know that we need trades, and we've known that for a while. However, we don't have enough programs to get people trained in the areas that we need. And that's also an issue with healthcare. As I've been knocking door to door, people are saying that there's not enough nurses and there's not enough PSWs. So we have in our platform that we will be investing in jobs and investing in youth so that there is good paying jobs in Sault Ste. Marie and in Ontario. We will also, as far as the Indigenous piece goes, it is actually on page 86 in our platform. You could read it right from our platform. It discusses training opportunities for Indigenous youth and the goal of greater access and training both on reserve and off reserve. It also talks about a greater partnership with First Nations on a government-to-government basis. And as we change from energy to green energy, that they will be consulted and they will be part of that process. And also that we would develop a meaningful, clear, and growing minimum targets for public sector procedures from First Nations owned and operated business. So we would invest in First Nation businesses, allowing youth to be entrepreneurs and allow them the opportunity to invest in themselves.
So that we know we need to work with partners to provide First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people with opportunity, especially our youth, which is why we're investing $30 million into a program called Skills Advance Ontario. It's a program that provides Indigenous youth with job training, and that's important. So making those investments is going to help First Nations youth find job opportunities up here in the north. The other thing that we're doing is we are supportive of an increased role for Indigenous institutions. It means that places like Shingwalk over at Algoma U can continue doing the important work that they're doing and give First Nations youth who decide to stay here in this community for their education a place to call home. It's a place where they can, meet with their elders, meet with different people who are also going to Algoma, who may or may not be of an Indigenous background. These are the types of investments that will provide opportunity for these youth in our community. Not only that, but our commitment to Ring of Fire and the method in which we are going about our consultations is one of respect. It shows that we are respectful of these communities. We're respectful of the fact that we need to make sure that they have equal opportunity in Ring of Fire development. That's something that's not only going to bring jobs to Sault Ste. Marie or Northern Ontario as a whole, but it's going to bring jobs to First Nations. Our commitment to connect the Watay power grid is another excellent example of things that we're doing to move the Ring of Fire development forward to make sure that First Nations youth, First Nations people up in those regions are going to have opportunity. And then the investments in education that we're making across the board, whether it's modernizing the apprenticeship program, are encouraging people to explore those trades, explore different options in terms of what skills gaps we might see here in this community, and making sure that our that Indigenous people have an equal share in that. Thank you.
This segues nicely. Like I said, the natural resources, we would like to implement a Northern Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources separate from the Toronto-led one that you know of right now. So that would open a lot of doors in that respect. Obviously, we support cooperative placements. Somebody's turning 65 every 7 seconds. And like my colleagues have said, lots of retirees. There's just, there doesn't seem to be an influx of people to close that gap where those skilled trades are, right? So that would mean highly subsidizing the classes for in-demand sectors and taking a look at schools acting as a post-secondary school is a business, right? So we want to make sure they're catering to the needs of skilled trades. And filling the gap between that. And as well, to touch on the Indigenous portion of it, really great entrepreneurial ventures in and around Sault Ste. Marie, and Family Tree, Voyageurs Lodge, things of that nature. So that's where we can really promote, the beautiful things that they're wares, and that's ties into small business. So I think that's a niche that we can take a look at as well. Thank you.
What question are we on?
Um,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do you want the question again?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. I'm sorry for the confusion. I didn't know a great deal about this, and I had to do a bit of reading, and I found out a couple of things. First of all, we need to invest money in increasing First Nation educational professionals. So, increase the indigenous student bursary program. I think, though, more importantly, we have to ask First Nations what supports that they would need. And they need to define for themselves what their priorities are. We can't tell them what they are. I found that there were some unusual, arbitrary barriers to them accessing education, such as eligibility requirements and proof of citizenship, which I thought was really odd. And they do need to have equal access to health and education services. Now, going forward, the Green Party wants to redirect $3.1 billion of existing business support programs to the clean tech and green tech industries, like smart manufacturing and innovative ways of dealing with waste streams and local food production and community energy resilience. So those opportunities, of course, would be available to anyone who sought to access those funds. In addition, a very exciting thing that we have that supports entrepreneurship is the basic income guarantee, which of course lifts people out of poverty and prevents them from slipping through the cracks while they take their chances and their risks to get their.
Next question, please. And now we will be reversing the order. So we'll start with you, Lance, and then move counterclockwise.
What will your government do to ensure we are training students for the jobs that are available and the jobs of the future? How will you strengthen post-secondary education opportunities in Northern Ontario?
We Libertarians would like to attach per-student funding to the student and not the school, so more of said funding goes to the student's needs and less to the bureaucracy of school boards and other such organizations. We feel this will give parents more say over their children's education. This per-student funding would also apply to private and homeschooling as well. For example, say a school has a bullying problem. Well, they will see their funding drop as students start to be enrolled elsewhere to avoid the problem, and they'll be forced to adapt their policies or risk closing. We would also allow more individual control over curricula so long as basic standards are met. This allows for more creative programs to be offered and allows Ontarians more choice. With schools having more control over their curricula and more able to adapt to the changing needs of the workforce, students can be more confident they are adequately prepared to start their new career. Also, eliminating redundant regulations and lowering electricity rates will reduce operating costs, allowing more investment into better courses and learning materials. I would also love to expand the apprenticeship program. On-the-job paid training is an amazing way to get hands-on training in many great careers, and I fully support that. Thank you.
Kara. We're going counterclockwise now.
Okay. Are we on question 7?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think one of the things that we need to reconsider about the skills development going forward, and we see out-migration as a significant problem in our community, is we have to step back and identify what skills we're going to need in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15-year timeframes, and identify what our demographic is going to be and incentivize those opportunities for students and for colleges and universities and skills training to provide those training opportunities and educational opportunities so that when young people finish their education plan, that if they want to return to our community, there's a need for those services or their skills in our community. So that helps deal with out-migration. We need to redirect the monies to incentivize the things that we do want and not get away from the old way of doing things. We need to take advantage of the opportunities that we have for clean tech jobs. Did you know there was like 274,000 Canadians working in clean energy, and the average salary for that is $92,000? Those are the types of things that we want to move towards, and we want our young people to move into those fields and take us into the future. There's a lot of opportunity in local food production and in caring communities and things, advanced manufacturing like Maker North. I'm so excited about them locally here, that we can do differently and have different plans for our young people to follow.
This stems from education from a northern perspective, and also an elementary school level, and that's where our platform starts out. So we're concerned about the closings of school rapidly in rural northern Ontario. So to alleviate that, we have suggested that when building a new school, perhaps it can be a multi-purpose use facility, such as municipal provincial buildings, libraries, things of that nature, offices, saves energy costs and building maintenance as well. And again, it ties into, we want to push for the subsidized, for in-demand sectors only, and as well as the platform which states that we would push for 50% of all the manufacturing from the natural resources being done in the north, thus creating jobs, and ensures a trajectory into the skills gaps in trades that we've also spoken to. Also, anything in the future endeavors, we have some great outlets here, such as, the Innovation Center in the Soo. They have contract placements for people of a certain age through NOHSC, FedNor, things of that nature. So they can do, now you're looking at things in the IT sector as well as data and analytics and things like that.
So it's important that we're making investments in our young people, especially when it comes to job training. And that's why we believe in investing in things like the High Skills Specialist Major Program. So it's a program that high school students can access, which gives them real on-the-job experience with employers for credit. We're also expanding OSAP, so it means that more students have access to either free tuition or generous grants. We believe that students should be attending school for their ability to learn, not their ability to pay. As I mentioned, we're also modernizing the apprenticeship program. So we know that 1 in 5 jobs are projected to be in the trades in the coming years. Investing in these types of programs that encourage young people to pursue trades will mean that we're able to address these skill gaps in our community in the future. The other thing that we're investing in are programs like the Career Ready Fund. So I know Algoma University has accessed this fund before, and again, it's so that post-secondary students can access on-the-job experiential learning so that they have real-life work experience. That's integral to them when they graduate. It means that they don't only have a theoretical knowledge, but they also have hands-on experience in the workplace. They know how a real job works, they have that experience with employers, and they're also able to make connections, they're able to network. It gives them opportunities to make connections right here in this community where they're going to school. Those are the types of investments that I believe that we need to make. We need to make sure that we're keeping our youth here. We have a youth out-migration program. I'm the product of one of those things. I was faced with that hard decision of being unemployed for almost 8 months and not knowing how I was going to pay my student debt. That's something that's concerning to me. So investing in programs like this is something I'm passionate about. I want to make sure that those opportunities are here for our youth so that we're not only having to attract them back to this community, but we're retaining them. We're letting them put down roots while they're going to school so that they can stay beyond graduation. Thank you.
So as I stated earlier, we're going to be investing 27,000 new opportunities in integrated co-ops as well as placements through internships for students in both the trades as well as other areas. We're looking into future employment opportunities such as IT and AI, We're going to be speaking with all the stakeholders and with the employers to find out where the need is and where the training should be. So by having Algoma University and Sault College and other institutions as partners, we can determine where the need is for the service. We're also going to look at supporting Franklin Ontario University, which currently has been talked about, but nothing has moved forward on it. We're looking at new renewal strategies that will convert part-time professors to full-time professors. Earlier this year, there was, as you're aware, there was a strike here at at both Algoma and Sault College, talking about precarious work. If there's positions for people to be working, they should be working full-time. It shouldn't be precarity where people are trying to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. By our instructors, we have quality instructors here in Sault Ste. Marie. Let's pay them for the quality work they do. That way, our students have something to look forward to. Our students have experience that they get through those instructors, and they have the opportunity to realize the opportunities in Sault Ste. Marie and Northern Ontario. With our new grant, with our OSAP program, we will be forgiving the grant, turning all of the loans into grants. And if you have a student loan currently, your interest will be forgiven and you will just pay the portion of your OSAP. So by investing in our students, in our community, we can keep students here, we can keep young people here and give them an opportunity to start work without a mountain of debt, as most of us started when we finished our university or college.
Well, as a starting point, we have to start right from the high school age. We need to revisit all of our curricular documentation that we use to teach our students and bring it up to date and ensure that our teachers are armed with the tools they need to be able to teach our kids and prepare them for the work world, for post-secondary education, and for life. We need to invest where the jobs are. You look at something specific here in Sault Ste. Marie at Algoma, speaking with the group there, they're looking at hiring up to 700 people over the next few years, both from positions right from labor to very skilled positions, and they don't have the people here being taught where those jobs are. So we want to make sure that we work together, and I plan on working together very closely. I've had discussions with President of Algoma University to ensure that we are putting the resources into the programs that can make sure our youth stays in Sault Ste. Marie and has work here in Sault Ste. Marie. And there's so many other areas. I look at things, for instance, engineering right across the province. For every student who graduates out of engineering, there are 3 jobs. For every 4 students who graduate, for every 1 student who graduates out of data coding, there are 4 jobs. Yet we continue to teach people in areas such as teaching where the jobs aren't there. It doesn't make a lot of sense. We need to invest where the jobs are. We need to look at the future trends and make those types of commitments to ensure that we're employing in the right areas. Looking at things in Ontario, Northern Ontario specifically, like forestry and mining, these are areas that we used to be leaders in and now we're lagging behind. 2003, Ontario was the #1 mining jurisdiction. Now we're number 23. So by enhancing those areas and then making sure that we teach our students at a young age, first off, of the value of that work and how great it is and how positive it can be for them, and then we train them in that area. That is the way we...
Next question.
What do you and your party plan to do to deal with climate change and to ensure the protection of the region's natural environment? Will you keep or replace the current cap-and-trade system in Ontario?
I love this question because everyone thinks that we're tree huggers, and I literally am, and that's okay. But everything that we do is to protect people, and you can't have happy, healthy, and productive people without having a safe and stable climate. So climate change is always on our radar, and we're the only platform, actually, that has climate change in our platform. So we have to get off fossil fuels as quickly as possible because we've got too much carbon in the air and it's changing our environment and disrupting things. So we love prices on carbon, and if you look around at the states and the provinces that have a carbon pricing, they actually have very strong economies compared to those that do not. Cap and trade is not the most efficient or effective way, and 150 of the biggest polluters are exempt from our carbon pricing under the current cap and trade. So we would implement a migration from cap and trade to a revenue neutral fee and dividend form of carbon pricing. And the value of that is that everything is priced on carbon, and everyone pays. Low income people actually pay less, and all of the revenues are returned to every Canadian. So that puts a check in your pocket. That incentivizes businesses and individuals to make better choices, to retrofit their homes, to use lower energy efficient items, to switch over their car to an electric vehicle. The cheapest gas bill is the one you don't pay. So a fee and dividend fund would get us to our climate goals and commitments to the world a lot faster. And electrifying mass transit, again, that saves us, that contributes up to 35% of our greenhouse gas emissions. Let's do.
We do as well have a platform as far as climate change goes, and to be specific, Northern Ontario wants to use northern produced hydro and eliminate the nuclear flow up north, ban the disposal of nuclear waste, take a look at the Green Energy Act and things of that nature, because they could be outdated for our purposes, right? But that's the balance of finding the happy medium between the red tape in order to have businesses come to fruition, and the other side of the coin is making sure that the natural resources, as I've said before, are there and are well taken care of. Also, we want to make sure that the royalties paid by any mining companies are put into a trust for that specific community, for their infrastructure, for anything that they need, so hopefully it's not neglected or substandard living conditions in those areas that you would find those manufacturing companies and things of that nature. Carbon tax, I'm not convinced is helping the environment. It's fiduciary. I think if a titan of industry wants to progress in a business, then they're going to come and they're going to do that. Same thing with fuels. You're not going to take cars off the road anytime soon. We have road tax on regular gasoline, excise taxes, things of that nature. I know hundreds of people that commute into town to work every day from Echo Bay, Prince Township, Gooley, and riding a bicycle is going to be real slow going. So I'm not convinced that carbon taxing is actually benefiting the actual earth as a whole.
We have a responsibility to take meaningful action against climate change. Federal carbon pricing is coming. So we've got ahead of the curve with a plan that allows us to dictate what that plan looks like. Ditching that program is going to cost us billions. Not only that, but it's going to open up the province to legal action. It could potentially open up our businesses to legal action. Further, the PCs are telling you that they're going to cut your gas prices by scrapping this program, but it's actually said that it'll raise gas prices significantly over the coming years. We have our Climate Change Action Plan, which is our demonstration to meaningful action against climate change. It means that we're able to take the revenue from cap and trade and reinvest it in retrofit programs for businesses and homes. It means that you get to access rebate programs to make sure that your home is efficient, your business is efficient. That's cost savings for you at the end of the day. Our plan for climate change is real. We believe in climate change. We know that we need to take action now because tomorrow's too late. And so we got ahead of the curve with a plan that works. Scrapping that plan is going to cost us billions of dollars, and a federal plan is coming. To fight the federal government in court is, again, going to cost millions of dollars. So we have a plan that's working. We have a plan that allows us to decide where those revenues are going, and it helps us decide what the plan looks like. We are not being told by the federal government how to spend that money or how to tax it. Thank you.
So we have a climate change policy in our platform. We will be looking at the rail strategy, as I had mentioned earlier, which will get some of the big trucks off the road, as well as it has other benefits, getting tourism and moving products and people in for the economy. We will be keeping the cap and trade. 25% of the cap and trade will go back to small and medium businesses that are affected in rural areas that are affected by the expenses We will also be looking at water and food security, which is an important issue in our communities, and especially in northern communities is an important issue. We'll be looking at cleaning up the mercury in some of the waterways that have not been touched to this point. So it is important, as we have said, and we will also be looking at giving 50% funding to municipalities so that they can develop a program in their area for transit, for cycling, etc. When I was on the Community Adjustment Committee, that was one of the issues that we did discuss, is how do we get more people off the roads and using their cars and get them on transit and cycling and walking. Of course, as was stated, it would be difficult to ride from Thessalon or Echo Bay, etc., into town. However, there is people in Sault Ste. Marie and that could use transit. And if our transit system was funded, we could certainly have better transit for all people in Sault Ste. Marie. So yes, we will be looking at some things in our platform that do discuss climate change, and it is listed and costed in our platform.
No, we do not support the carbon tax or cap and trade. This is just a perfect example of how out of touch this Liberal government has been for the last 15 years and where it has hurt our economy locally in Ontario. So the cap and trade system, what is it at the end of the day? It's mandated by the federal government that we must have a $50 tax per ton on carbon. What the Liberals did provincially was cap and trade. So they came up with this interesting system of imaginary credits. They made up this imaginary currency, and there's only a few other states that participate, Quebec and California, and we have to trade this imaginary currency with these other places, and we ship $460+ million to California and Quebec. That does not help us. That hurts us, and it does nothing to help the environment. We need better strategies, research and development strategies to actually look at how we resolve issues with respect to climate change. This out-of-touch strategy the Liberals came up with, cap and trade, is not going to help us. But talk about out of touch, then you look at the NDP platform policy, they actually want to triple that. They want you to spend $150 a ton on your carbon. So we're not going to send $466 million to California to help their economy. We're going to spend like $1.2 billion. So this is not going to help us here in Ontario. It's not going to help our economy. It's not going to do anything to improve our economy. This is just when we talk about the Liberals have done so much to cause so much significant waste and mismanagement in the province, hurt our job growth. We are losing manufacturing jobs. We've lost 350,000 jobs in the last 15 years, and the NDP is just more of the same. They're just going to make it a lot worse. That's the difference. Thank you.
Growing up and spending most of my life in Northern Ontario, I've always loved nature. I grew up camping, hunting, and fishing, and I want my daughter to be able to enjoy the natural beauty of our province as well. We have excellent regulations protecting our waterways, which must be preserved. I learned this when I took forestry and I had a fish and wildlife course, and our watershed protection laws are very great. We must also continue to make sure that if industry wants to extract a resource, they have a clear plan on how to restore the land after they are done. It is sad to say, but if fines are so lax that it's cheaper to pay the fine and pollute, that's exactly what's going to continue. If we are going to issue fines, they should be stiff enough to actually be a deterrent. I would scrap the cap and trade system, which is just a money grab, and it sends money out of our province to California and Quebec. I believe that while carbon may contribute to climate change, man's impact pales in comparison to natural sources like volcanic eruptions, which have been happening recently. Canada's carbon emissions also pale in comparison to other jurisdictions such as the US or China. Trees and other plant life breathe carbon. This is a scientific fact. A better solution than taxing businesses for carbon, which actually hurts our economy, would be to make them purchase some green space, which they would ward over to offset their carbon emissions. I've always said that if you want to reduce carbon, plant a tree, or better yet, hemp, because it clears out more carbon and it has so many textile uses as well. Thank you.
And this next question will be our last question for the evening.
Ontario lags behind all other Canadian provinces that have implemented pharmacists with assessment and prescribing for minor ailments, ability to order lab tests, perform point-of-care medical testing, and funded administration of additional publicly funded vaccines. What is your plan to improve hospital wait times and optimize healthcare deliveries, specifically in Northern Ontario, as well as how to better utilize our healthcare workers to their fullest scope?
We also have a platform delving into this, and we really want to put focus on the two university hospitals. We want to get specialized talent in the area. As you know, probably you or somebody you love has had to go out of town. So we really would like to focus on an influx of talent in the areas of cardiac, oncology, obviously added focus on mental health situations as well. And in the spirit of retrofitting, also taking older hospitals and converting them to seniors housing and having those led by doctors or a nurse practitioner. Now that all wraps up nicely into a place you would like to live, be it Sault Ste. Marie, getting doctors here, retaining that talent and keeping them. So that's something that we have to look into. Also, we would like to improve the patient to caregiver ratio by at least 20%, and in the more rural areas create patient family housing for those who do have to travel for specialized treatment in those areas. So it's going to be tough because we have to find a balance between federal and municipal and who's doing what there. I was talking to an ambulance driver who said he was going to at least 10 calls of ODs a day, and when he goes to the hospital he cannot just simply leave them there. He's got to wait for frontline staff, and as you know, they're already overworked, they're up against a wall. So that's something that definitely needs to be looked at here as well as the other communities in Northern Ontario.
So I had a very productive meeting with Mitchell Zorzet from Shoppers Drug Mart, and he provided valuable insight into the ways that we can maximize our healthcare workers, especially when it comes to pharmacists. I look forward to working with healthcare professionals so that we can continue to examine how we might be able to alleviate some of the stresses on our healthcare system by the maximization of those workers. With specific regards to wait times, the Ontario Liberal Party platform has committed an increase of 5% in hospital funding. So that means an $822 million increase in hospital funding across the province. It means that Sioux Area Hospital next year will see an increase of 2.6%. It means $5 billion over the next 3 years specifically to address wait times. We're choosing to invest in healthcare so that people have a greater increase to access, people are getting better care, and we're able to reduce wait times across the province, especially here in Northern Ontario, especially here in Sault Ste. Marie. Thank you.
So outlined in our platform, as I've talked about earlier, we will be investing in healthcare services. We'll be investing in long care as well as senior care. All of those things will assist the hospitals in shortening the wait times, ending hallway medicine, and the issues that have been in our hospital this year. As I go around and speak to people at the door, I'm very frustrated with the number of stories that I've heard about not enough care at our hospital and not enough funding, not enough frontline staff. We will be increasing the funding to the hospitals by 5.3%. We talked about our pharmacare and dental care program. By putting these programs in place, people will no longer need to go to the hospital to have dental care done. They'll no longer need to go to the hospital to get medications renewed. This will reduce the wait times at the hospital and allow the staff to work on emergency situations and other situations that they need to work on. We're going to establish a mental health and addictions ministry, which, as we all know, is certainly a service that's well needed in Sault Ste. Marie. And we need to be able to have wait times reduced for people even as young as our 6-year-old students that are waiting months and months for assessments. And by not having those services in place, those students at that young age are having difficulty in their home life, difficulty in their school life, and we need to get funding in place for all those services. So with establishing the mental health and addictions, we can certainly the ministry can certainly work on issues that have been surrounding us for a long time. I've been in education for 10 years, and I can see, and I have seen for a long time, that my students don't have the services they require. The Liberal government has been working on issues, but it's not soon enough. We're going to put, and for the Ford government with their $6 billion in cuts, I stood in front of the hospital this morning and talked, where are those cuts going to come from? In Sault Ste. Marie, if they're talking about public services, this
We are lagging behind in this area. Pharmacists have been speaking to us for some time into the Liberal government and have been ignored. There's a number of provinces here in this country who are giving the keys to our pharmacists to do a lot more to provide quality healthcare services that would not in any way compromise the health or safety of the public. I think what we need to have is a more evidence-based impact analysis way of doing government, and that is the problem. We can't focus on ideologies. Like our method of looking at things is that we will talk to the doctors, we will talk to the pharmacists, we will talk to the nurses, we will talk to all our healthcare professionals to look at how do we better deliver quality, world-class services to our communities, to our patients. Not Liberal and NDP ideologies that want to tell other people how to do it. I have 7 years of university where I became a lawyer. I'm not going to tell a doctor how to serve a patient better. I don't think that's right. I think we need to focus on the people who know what they're talking about, who know their areas, who care about their patients and want to deliver quality care to them. That is the most important thing we need to do. That is what we need to focus on. We do need to give them some tools and some resources. So we will build 15,000 long-term beds in 5 years, 30,000 in 10 years to alleviate the strain on the long-term care facility problems with long-term care facilities we have. We're going to invest $1.9 billion into mental health and addictions. That is going to free up a great deal of space in our budgets because hospital wait times are hit quite hard as a result of the amount of patients going in for those reasons, and provide low-income seniors with dental care. That's another area that hits our emergency rooms hard. But for all these attacks that people want to say about us hurting the healthcare system or any cuts the PC party is going to make, those are completely false. They are lies. Don't believe it. If it was true, why would the doctors be supporting us? We received the endorsement of the doctors in Ontario.
Okay. Well, 3 years ago, I had a job on the Mile Hill wind farm. I had an accident. A sheet of plywood fell on my head from about 60 feet up. I had a massive concussion. I was in and out of the hospital every second day. My shortest wait time was 5 hours. This is completely unacceptable. By breaking the government monopoly on and opening OHIP up to private competition, we plan to make our healthcare system a lot more efficient and allow Ontarians a choice of coverage for the first time that I can remember. This will lead to shorter wait times and better, more personalized coverage. Whenever I mention this, people get scared that we're going to fall into an American-style system, and this is absolutely not the case. The private insurers will not be trying to take any of your money directly. They will just be competing for your portion of the healthcare pool of tax dollars. By eliminating redundant regulations, hospitals and clinics will be free to use healthcare professionals to the best of their abilities. This would also allow Ontario to catch up to other provinces who have expanded the capabilities of their pharmacists. We must also not forget about the benefits of some healthcare professionals switching from the public to the private sector. Not only are their large salaries no longer being drawn from the healthcare budget, but now they are also now contributing to the tax pool. These savings can be used to increase services and expand the infrastructure and drastically reduce our wait times.
Okay, immediately we can take advantage by rethinking the skill sets that we have available in our community and make the best use of them to prevent mental health and addiction services or needs from clogging up our emergency rooms. And that means increasing access to primary care in a variety of ways, like expanding nurse practitioner clinics or community clinics, and as was mentioned, expanding pharmacist services. So an example of that is the rapid access addiction medication clinic, and that's helping to prevent people going unnecessarily to the hospital emergency, which is extremely expensive. The best bang for your buck for healthcare in the long term is prevention, and we pay lip service, but let's put our money where our mouth is. In rolling mental health services into OHIP, that right there is a big step to making mental health services available to people, affordable, and where they are. And mental health and addiction umbrella organization will make these more complementary and cost effective. We need to expand LHIN's resources so that they're able to do evaluations and to redirect where the need is most. And basically, a basic income guarantee has been shown to reduce the impact and the effect and the cost on healthcare, mental health, and addiction services. So let's prevent it in the first place for the long run for affordability.
Thank you for the answers to those questions. We will now open the floor to closing remarks from each candidate, and it will be the opposite order as our opening remarks. So Lance, it will be you, and we will continue counterclockwise. You have 1 minute and 45 seconds.
Okay, thank you. I would like to once again thank everybody for being here. As a candidate for one of the smaller, less known parties, I appreciate this chance to get some exposure for the Libertarian Party of Ontario. Our main objective is to protect our individual liberties by reducing government control over the many aspects of our lives. We want to give individuals more rights over the property they own and make it easier to purchase and develop said property. Canadians should be allowed to do what they want on their property so long as they aren't harming others or the environment. We also want to bring more quality jobs to Ontario by making it both easier and less costly to do business here. When Ontarians don't have to worry about being able to afford their expenses, they are more free to enjoy our beautiful province. Thank you.
This election, I think it's important to think about the good old days when politics was boring and not entertainment, when you could vote and then rely on the government to make decisions until the next election. And if you objected, you phoned your office and made your message be known. Nowadays, with the polarization and the vitriol that's happening and the disenfranchisement and the frustration that voters are feeling to the point where 49% of them aren't even showing up, I think we need to take a step back. The Green Party is committed to doing politics differently so that we can relax, so that we can make decisions that are going to benefit Ontario and the people in this province. This is one of the first elections where the youth, the younger vote, actually outnumbers the older voters. So that is an opportunity for young people to get involved. And that 49% that doesn't show up, if you're in that group, please use your voice. Your voice is in your vote, and show up on June 7th and have your say. And if you're nervous at all about voting, organize a vote party with your friends who have never voted before either. You can check out where you fit on the spectrum of the platforms of the various parties on votecompass.ca, and that will help you identify which party best reflects you. Otherwise, I'd appreciate your vote, and thank you very much for joining us this evening.
You won't find us on Vote Compass, so I urge you again to go to our website and do a little more research for yourself, because if you take that quiz, we're not on it, but we want to be on your radar, right? So we are a smaller party. It's our first year. We're rebranding. We want to get the word out there. Do we want votes? Of course we do. Will we fight for you down in the GTA? Of course we will. even though there's a top three, there's still a dichotomy there. So you're either voting for hemorrhaging money, into services that, albeit are essential. Nobody wants to address why more and more people are trying to access these social services. Why is that happening, right? And then on the other side, we're cutting back everything, and you're worried that you're not going to get access to any social services. And whether you like Kathleen Wynne or not, she gifted us smaller parties with her conceding the other day. So if you were on the fence at all, and she is advising you that a minority government would be in your best interest, then I see absolutely no reason not to vote for a smaller party. We're not delusional, thinking we're going to come and sweep the whole thing and be your, the next end all and be all. But, we're going to try and make a little bit of history, if not a lot of history this time around. So thank you so much.
So again, I want to ask you, what kind of community do you want to see? Do you want to see a community based in cuts, or do you want to see a community based in care? The PC Party is making you billions of dollars of promises, but they're not telling us where those billions are coming from. They're not telling us what they're going to cut. Is it nurses? Is it teachers? We all remember Mike Harris. What services, what supports in Northern Ontario will be cut so that they can deliver on those promises? The other thing I want you to think about is what kind of premier you want. What do you want to see in that person? Mr. Romano has worked very, very hard throughout this campaign to distance himself from Doug Ford. Ask yourself why that is. Why is that? I've heard from you at the doors that you're concerned about that type of leadership. You're concerned about Doug Ford being at the helm of this province with a majority government, and I'm there with you. That's why I'm running. I'm running because I don't want Doug Ford to be my premier. It's that simple. I believe that our community needs care. I believe in investing in our people. I believe in investing in our province. And what I'm hearing when I talk to each and every one of you is not now is the time for cuts. It's now is the time for care. It's that you need support. It's that you want to access services. Not just across the province, but here in Northern Ontario, here in Sault Ste. Marie. Those are the types of things that I'm fighting for. I want to make sure we don't go back to Mike Harris era days. I remember not going to school because my teachers were on strike. I want to make sure that this community gets what it needs. I want to make sure that our community and its people gets what it needs. Thank you very much.
So interesting that Ross talked about healthcare. This morning there was an article in the Health Coalition that discussed the cost of the PC healthcare program and how it would be way more expensive than any other program that's being put in place currently. So, and it's also interesting that he says we're talking about lies, because actually his program is not costed. And the things that are costed, such as his childcare program, work out to $23 a day. When we're looking at a childcare program for $12 a day, a universal childcare program. So again, as Jacqueline has said, you have to ask yourself what kind of government you want to see in Ontario and what kind of leader you want to see in Ontario. And I stand behind Andrea Horvath as our leader. She has a costed fiscal plan that has been put in place. It's a 88-page document that you're welcome to read on ondp.ca. You can go there and read the platform and judge for yourself what you see and what you like in the platform. Myself, I'm Michelle McLeave Kennedy. Interesting that only half of my last name fit on my paper, but I'm running as a candidate here in Sault Ste. Marie because I was frustrated with lobbying the government for 10 years and seeing little response of things that we were trying to get in place for workers across the province, as well as for my students that I work with that need services. So the NDP has a plan to reduce your hydro by 30%, to invest in healthcare and senior care, invest in the economy, childcare, and education. And we have a fiscal costed plan for you to read and for you to see. So on Thursday, please vote by making an informed decision as to who you think will be the best premier for Ontario.
Well, thank you. I've got a question to ask everybody. How many of you all think that our government operates efficiently? I could tell you there's only two people who seem to think our government is efficient, and that's Andrea Horvath and Kathleen Wynne. That's it. No one else seems to think that we're efficient in our operations. In 15 years of Liberal mismanagement, we have seen our hydro rates go up 300%. We have seen 350,000 manufacturing jobs leave our province. We have seen our deficit triple, more than triple, in fact. It's gone up to $354 billion. We pay $1.1 billion a month in interest payments alone. If we were to compare that to government ministries, it would be the third highest expenditure next to the health and education budgets. Imagine that. Is that something that you're proud of? Is that efficiency? I don't think so. We currently we just simply can't afford to go down this path anymore. What happens if the interest rates go up? Right now it's low, the interest rates, but what happens if they go up and when they go up? What will we do then? The NDP want to talk about all their great ideas and talk about costed plans. We can't afford because they're just going to be more expensive than the Liberals. Let me put it in perspective. The NDP, when they got in power in 1990, they tripled their deficit from 30 to 90 plus billion dollars in only 5 years. That was a third of the time it took the Liberals to triple it. That's why I say they're more of the same. People want to talk about leaders. There's a lot of leaders in this race who don't seem to be liked very much. I'm not distancing myself. I'm focusing on me and what I can do for my community. Doug Ford will be premier on Thursday. That is going to happen. Who do you want representing you locally?
Thank you to our candidates for taking part in this forum and mostly sticking to the time frame that we set out for them. We wish each of you the best in the remaining campaign period. Regardless of the outcome, I think that we should all thank each of you for willingly committing to taking up representation for our community at Queen's Park. I would like to once again thank our partners this evening, the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce, Shaw TV and its staff and volunteers who are here to televise tonight's forum, SooToday for their assistance in streaming tonight's event online, Algoma University and its political science program for their input into tonight's event and their assistance with the development of the questions. And we would also like to acknowledge the staff of the City of Sault Ste. Marie and in particular the City's Clerk's Office who were instrumental in securing use of council chambers for this evening's event. Lastly, we would like to thank everyone here in council chambers and those viewing at home for joining us. We hope that this discussion has helped better inform you each about the candidates and their respective platforms. We encourage you to exercise your right to have your voice heard and make sure you take part in the election process on June 7th. Thank you again and good night.